As millennials, we've been called the entitled generation all of our lives, but we've had no say in the stereotype that's defined us since before we were born. Are millennials really the entitled generation, or are we much more than that? Let's find out what Rutgers students think.
One word to describe our generation. Spoiled.
Ambitious.
Computers.
A little ignorant.
Generation Y, in one word, it would be vicarious, because we're always kind of going in a direction that someone else usually wants us to go in, and maybe that's why there's a lack of effort to some extent.
I believe as Americans, it's part of our culture to feel entitled.
Yeah, I feel like our generation does have more of a sense of entitlement.
No, I think that we may have belief that we do, but in actuality, not really.
I don't think that a lot of people feel as though they are entitled to anything specific, but me personally, there are a few things that you just take for granted.
Partly, I guess, because we were raised in such a generation with all this advancement in technology and all this not unnecessary but more luxurious sort of lifestyle compared to other generations.
We're the bad kids, I feel like. We're all wanting to try to get away with as much as we can with marijuana rules on the brink and everything. It's just kind of trying, at least in this part of our life before we have to go into full careers, we feel like we have entitlement to do whatever we want and see how much we can get away with.
I think a lot of people may struggle to know how to get the things that they want in life, so they automatically think it should just be handed to them. A lot of the times we don't know how to get those things, so I think that our generation just needs to look harder at finding the ways to get those things for themselves, as opposed to just thinking it should be handed to them.
I think individualistic. The baby boomers were considered the ones that were rebels, right, in the 1960s, but there was actually a fair amount of conformity and a lot of rallying around very big political issues. Today, I think there's a focus on improving oneself and trying to be different and using very different cultural images, right? This generation didn't have just 2 TV stations they watched, they had 50. So everyone's able to carve out a life and an identity and a personal style that's idiosyncratic in a way that makes them feel special, feeding back into the sense of entitlement. The baby boom generation was raised and came of age during the Vietnam War, the Civil Rights era, so they thought very collectively. They saw major social problems that they together wanted to change, whereas the younger generation is very individually focused. They don't think necessarily of large macro social change, but really ways to improve on their own capacities or to do things that benefit themselves. I think one similarity is both generations are considered a little bit disillusioned, but for different reasons. The baby boomers grew up very trusting, but then the world came apart in the 60s with the assassinations of JFK and Martin Luther King, followed by the Vietnam War. So they had this rude awakening that many of them grew up to distrust political figures and major social institutions, whereas the younger generations always came of an age post-Nixon, post-Watergate, and they tended to have a distrust and skepticism toward the political system, even the economic system, and I think that's part of the reason why they tend to be more focused on pursuing individual goals and looking out for number one.
We millennials might be known as the entitled generation, but as you can see, we're much more than that. I'm Lorraine Callender, RUTV.